Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank and congratulate the CGS and the person of Siluham and our friends for this amazing gathering that we have here. I mean, it's good to see how the evolution of all those years, how this event is growing more stronger and more representative for all of us. Regarding our panel today, Turbulent Waters Navigating Maritime Security in a Divided Indo-Pacific, I think it's interesting to understand that for centuries, portions of water have been key in the developments, in trades, in cooperation, and even in security for many different countries in all over the world. In my region, in the Americas, we have the Caribbean Sea, for instance, which is a key place with many different problems and opportunities are generated even today. And here we have the Indo-Pacific Ocean that both covers most of the countries that are here in many different countries, important countries, and are now on the hotspots of one of the biggest challenges for the world. So, without further delay, I'll pass the word to my colleagues. I'd like to start with Ms. Simpson. Please, could you start giving us an overview of the region, highlighting the key challenges that impacts the Indo-Pacific region?
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to reiterate also how wonderful it is to be here today at this third installment of the conversation. I think drawing on Mr. Mara's remarks just earlier, we need to continue these conversations and continue to engage with each other. So I think the title itself around conversation is really apt. In terms of, to answer this particular question, I think it's important to take a look at how we might frame the region. So from the Australian perspective, just to point out that for us, the region, the Indo-Pacific region, obviously stretches across the Indo-Pacific, but our near region is actually defined by the Bay of Bengal. So we feel very much that we are in the near region, and being from Australia, it feels quite apt to be the one describing, giving an overview of the region. And it's a very privileged position to be here today. There are many challenges. A lot of this was touched upon in the overarching comments ahead of the sessions yesterday. But some of these include territorial disputes, piracy, environmental threats, illegal fishing, to which I would also add transnational crime, including human trafficking and terrorism. But the important thing about these issues is that they're not at all new. These have been around for a very long time in very different forms. I think the challenge today is that these issues are compounded by the fact that they're situated against a backdrop of broader geostrategic competition in the Indo-Pacific region, things that I'm sure my colleagues on the panel will also discuss today. So in many ways, putting aside the technical issues that might be there around things like piracy or illegal fishing, transnational crime and so on, and of course, territorial disputes, the real challenge is how, in this context, how can countries contribute to the strategic balance in the Indo-Pacific region? How can we build coalitions to foster assurance against these challenges? Both in terms of the technical aspects of the challenges themselves, but also finding the political will to work together in these challenging times.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to, since we made the overview of the region, I'd like to go to our host country, to Bangladesh, and ask Mr. Ahmad. Bangladesh recently adopted an Indo-Pacific outlook. Could you briefly highlight what are the key contributions of these new instruments to the development and security of the region?
Muito obrigado. Thank you very much, Leonardo. Before I specifically make my comments on the Bangladesh's outlook on the Indo-Pacific strategy, I'd like to share with you one of the catchphrases which became very famous in Peru, which was like, from Chancay to Shanghai. From Chancay to Shanghai, the new China-Peru BRI project. Since the Indo-Pacific strategy also has some ramifications or much of ramifications depending on the context of the individual players. So the connections of land and sea through the either through the maritime Silk Route or the initiatives, the important point comes to each one of our mind that the national interest reigns supreme for individual nations. And Peru, or for that matter, Bangladesh, is not an exception. The geostrategic context, if you look into in the proximity of Bangladesh and Bangladesh's neighbor, Bay of Bengal, we talk about the Malacca dilemma. Dilemma for whom? Who will benefit? Who will not benefit? Are we talking to contain one individual country or a nation? Are we going to benefit from it? What economic or security benefit we can gain from there? Then the strategic will for power at sea. Again, what is the connotation and the context? The hyper-Mahanian approach for sea power, is it not going to pose a big threat for each one of us, the individual nations? Again, the maintaining of the global maritime primacy. We would love to see the Indo-Pacific region. Bangladesh would love, as far as I am concerned, to see a free and open Indo-Pacific, to have free trade, free flow of trade for the prosperity of the region and particularly individual nations. But then there are, to my humble understanding, two important points, two real threats. One is unreal threat and one is real threat. As a veteran Navy officer, I personally feel the unreal threat has been discussed so much and the real threat is relegated. In the late 1970s or in 1980s, the Chinese Foreign Ministry used to send note verbal of protest not to violate their airspace or maritime space. And they used to issue series of. Now, from the audience, including myself, how many of us we are aware how many diplomatic protest note Taiwan is issuing each day, each week? So there are real politic events, India, Pakistan, China, Japan, Korean Peninsula, the Taiwan Strait, South China Sea. For Bangladesh, the Big B, BRI, MSR, Sagar, Sagarmala, String or Pearls, these are issues which are supposed to have implications on Bangladesh's strategic outlook in the Indo-Pacific strategy. So coming to my comments specifically now, I personally feel the Indo-Pacific outlook of Bangladesh that was done hurriedly, and why it is done hurriedly, we need to do things with urgency, not with hurry. This is what is my understanding. And as such, the outlook need to be revisited. Why? Because now Bangladesh is in a moment of 2.0 after a successful revolution. So we need to look into it with new perspective, new vigor, new inspiration, with rewriting our constitution, reorienting our foreign policy outlook, to have more clarity, to have more specificity and inclusivity. For instance, the Indo-Pacific economic framework, there Bangladesh is not there. Bangladesh also needs to balance between both the parties because of also the national interest of Bangladesh itself and the very traditional Bangladesh's approach to our international friends and allies. The outlook has not looked into the importance of 98% of our container freight is through the sea, 94% of our maritime trade is through the sea. Bangladesh's maritime dependency factor is 35 only. These are the things, as I say, we need to look into and then look back and rewrite our Indo-Pacific outlook, not only for Bangladesh, but to benefit our friends and allies. And there, I have my personal understanding to contribute to the Indo-Pacific region, we need to have a maritime construct of regional maritime strategy of realpolitik for the Indo-Pacific nations and our development partners in the area. There, I would like to mention, and if I have time afterwards, I can explain further. We need to have 3 steps of a framework. At the political level, that should be the strategic directives of the major players, including the minor players. There should be a team efforts. Then, from that strategic directives, there should flow a regional maritime policy, and that should be in line with individual nations' maritime strategy or policies within the greater framework of the regional maritime strategy for realpolitik of the Indo-Pacific region. And there, we need to have, the team need to sit, the friends and alliance, they need to sit and define the vision, the mission, the roles as how to go about it. Thank you, Nyanda.
Thank you very much. Moving to the east, I would like to go with now Mr. Brewster. Australia is becoming an increasingly active actor in the Bay of Bengal area. What are the Australia's interests in the region, and how do you see Australia-Bangladesh relationship evolving?
Thanks, Leonardo, and assalamu alaikum, and good morning to everyone here. In answering that question, I'll just start with the basic geographic fact that Australia is a continent, the only continent with one country in the world. It's surrounded by 3 oceans. Australia has by far the longest Indian Ocean coastline of any country in the Indian Ocean, by far the biggest EEZ of any country in the region. So it has really substantial interests in the Indian Ocean. The Northeast Indian Ocean is identified as a principal area of strategic interest for Australia. Virtually all of the oil that Australia uses flows through the Northeast Indian Ocean, particularly the Bay of Bengal. A majority of our exports flow through the Northeast Indian Ocean. And we have a vital interest, in particular, in the maritime security of the Bay of Bengal, whether it be concerns about illegal fishing, human trafficking, drug smuggling, etc. And Australia's approach to the region, as identified by our Foreign Minister, is to work with our regional partners to help build their sovereign national capabilities so that they can better govern their own maritime spaces. And Australia has a very direct interest in seeing all of our regional partners being able to better govern their own maritime spaces for the benefit of us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving back to the center, I would like to get an Indian perspective right now. So, Mr. Bhardwaj, how does India perceive the evolving strategic challenges in the Indo-Pacific region, particularly with the rise of China's influence and its assertive maritime behavior, especially in the South China Sea?
Thank you. The bigger question, what we are thinking, that since we are thinking about this discussion in fractured world. But I do find that the world was always fractured. But the issue is that now the world is basically aligning and realigning. And the major question of aligning and realigning is that who will dominate the water? Whose primacy will be on the water? So this is one of the primary questions that the states are aligning and realigning. But what is most important is that the international institutions, where they have been receded and the world has started focusing more on the collective security mechanism. And in this debate where the state-centric security approach has been taken place by the human security approach, but in this human security approach, what it is noticing that the state has become more protectionist state, and in this protection of the human security, that now they are basically they are some of the states has become expansionist, some of the states has become revisionist, and because of this expansionist and revisionist approach to ensure the human security of that particular territory, the states are conflicting on major issues. That one is that whose water in the sense of the exclusive economic zone, whose resources in that particular territorial water, and this is the fundamental factors that the conflicts has arisen, particularly in South China Sea. While we are looking forward the South China Sea, where Vietnam and Chinese, they are conflicting on the exclusive economic zone, on the resources that they are having, and they once they are inviting the external actors to invest in that region, the China has objections. Philippines is also having problems with China, and the Chinese, the way they are increasing, they are developing artificial islands and all that, has become a source of conflict in South China Sea. This is one that while we are looking forward in South China Sea, but it is not stopping just with the South China Sea, that the countries are also looking at alternative ways of connecting with other seas, that particularly the South China Sea is connecting with the Indian Ocean. And in that sense, I have seen that number of corridors has been developed, particularly one China-Pakistan economic corridor, you can see connecting with the Arabian Sea. Then there is also China-Myanmar economic corridors that they are trying to connect through Myanmar, Bay of Bengal. That is very critical, very sensitive regions in the perspective of having small state security. Bangladesh is there, India is there, the regional power. And then Myanmar, has again become a very troubling country in a sense of the conflicts between rebellions and or resistance forces and the military junta, and the countries who believes in the expansionist approach, or who believes in protecting and expanding and looking forward to connect other seas, are protecting one actors or the other actors for their geopolitical interest. So South China Sea, in a sense of connecting the two seas, has become a major focal points or conflicting points, keeping the geostrategic and geo-economic perspectives into mind. The countries are also looking to have, like particularly I see that the southern Thailand, that they are looking forward to have that isthmus of Kara, that is the Kara canals that they want to connect with, to avoid the Malacca Strait, that Malacca dilemma, because that Malacca is a very thin strait, and major trades take place through Malacca Straits. That particularly the Chinese 80% of energy trade takes place through Malacca Strait. The Japanese also major trade takes place through that Malacca Strait, and that is very significant, very important. So the countries, they are avoiding these choke points, and they are developing alternative discourse. And because of these all manufacturing, because of these all approaches and initiatives by the emerging powers, or by the Asian powers, has become a source of conflict. And now the smaller states, particularly while I'm indicating about the ASEAN countries, they are looking a balancing factor, that who can balance this emerging threat and emerging perceived threat from the Asian power. So either they are looking the major superpowers to act and more actively in this region, or they are also looking India as a source to balance, particularly in South China Sea and cultivating. Under this, India has developed very significant policy initiatives. One is, of course, Act East policy. In this Act East policy, India is trying to connect with Southeast Asian countries through cultural connectivity, through physical connectivity, through commercial connectivity, and the fourth very important, very significant aspects, and that can be included in Indo-Pacific strategy, is the capacity buildup of the Southeast Asian countries. This is one aspect that the countries are looking forward to balance the the rivalries in South China Sea. The second, of course, that there are also transnational engagements or trans-regional engagement, I would say. The SAARC countries and the ASEAN countries, they are coming under BIMSTEC, and through this BIMSTEC, they are also cultivating, connecting through number of projects, particularly the Tri-Nations road connectivity projects, where India, Myanmar, and Thailand, they are connecting, and they are looking forward to connect it up to Vietnam. So point is there that in this troubling waters, the countries, the smaller states, they are very conscious, and they are also trying to join the alignment and realignments that is emerging in this Indo-Pacific strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, moving to the other parts of the ocean, I'd like to invite Mr. Hakotvani. Wafi? Did I pronounce it right? Okay, sorry. Dominic. Most of the discussion here is being focused on the eastern fronts of the Indian Ocean. So could you please highlight to us the key challenges of the western portion of the Indian Ocean and how they differ with one another?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Center for Global Studies for inviting me from that very far away part of this Indian Ocean region to participate in this Bay of Bengal conversation. To start with, I'd like to just locate Madagascar in case some people don't know where it is. It is a big island off the coast of South Africa and separated from the continent of Africa by the Mozambique Channel. What are the key challenges that we're facing there? In this part of the ocean, the Western Indian Ocean, the most important challenge is the illegal fishing, illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, called in short IUUF, which result in the overfishing and the depletion of the stocks of fish, and this entails afterwards the reversion of the fishermen to piracy, as is the case in Somalia. And then we have those transnational challenges like drug, human trafficking. Also, in the southwestern part, natural disasters like cyclones, and also marine pollution, because more and more oil tankers go through the Cape of Good Hope because of the problem in the access in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. This is due to the conflict in the Middle East, where the Houthi or Hamas or Hezbollah send drones and missiles around, and it's not even only a maritime threat, but a week ago, Air France had to return to Paris because the pilots saw some missiles flying around. There are also around Madagascar some territorial disputes. For example, Madagascar with France over some scattered islands in the Mozambique Channel. Comoros with France over the island of Mayotte. Mauritius with Great Britain, even if there was an improvement over the archipelago of Chagos, including the Diego Garcia, where the US naval base is located. So those are the challenges because this is a vast area of responsibility compared to a lack of capacity and resources. A note is, I have to make a remark on the fact that in Mozambique, since 2017, there is a rise of jihadism in the province of Cabo Delgado in the north, between Mozambique and Tanzania, where France's Total Energy company tried to exploit some natural gas with an investment of over 10 billion euros, and that is a real problem in the area. So mainly those are the main challenges in that area.
Many thanks. I'll come back to Ms. Simpson to try to take a more positive note here in the sense that, from the perspective of a positive agenda, what are the areas in which further regional cooperation could help to shape a safe, secure, and prosperous region?
There we go. Thank you for that question. I'd like to take your indulgence and read something from the Australian Foreign Minister's speech that she gave to the Indian Ocean Conference earlier this year. And the reason I'd want to read it is because it really highlights Australia's vision for the Indo-Pacific region, and also it touches upon a range of issues and provides that kind of framework for how we think about the region. So throughout history, we've seen small countries at vast distances from major powers bear the brunt of a race for dominance. As expanding military powers take a greater interest in our region, we each need to sharpen our focus on what our interests are and how to work together to uphold them. Our interests remain clear. We're directing our efforts towards shaping a region that is peaceful and predictable, that is governed by accepted rules and norms, where all of us can cooperate, trade, and thrive. Where a larger country does not determine the fate of a smaller country, where each country can pursue its own ambitions, where no country dominates and no country is dominated. Rather than a closed, hierarchical region, we want a region characterized by openness and transparency, a region that prioritizes the resilience and autonomy of regional countries, the maintenance of regional peace and stability, and adherence to international law and agreed rules and norms, where all countries' sovereignty is respected. This vision for our region is grounded in sovereignty. Sovereignty at a fundamental level is about being able to make your own decisions and shape your own future. So that is the broader context within which the Australian government looks at the positive agenda for the region. And since 2022, the Australian government took steps to enhance its engagement in the Northeast Indian Ocean region. And through that, some of the work I'm sure Mr. Brewster will talk about in terms of maritime domain awareness, but also things such as enhanced trade. And cooperation on things such as maritime security. So this year we've had the privilege in Bangladesh of having two senior level ministerial visits in Bangladesh. So, and that followed 2 visits by our Assistant Foreign Minister Watts back in 2022 and 2023. So this year, Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong visited in May. And just 3 weeks ago, our Home Minister, who is also the Minister for Cyber Affairs, Immigration, Multicultural Affairs and the Arts, and also the Leader of the House, Mr. Tony Burke, visited Bangladesh just 3 weeks ago. And in that, during his visit, he signed 2 MOUs. And it's these 2 MOUs that I want to focus on. The first was an MOU on civil maritime safety and security cooperation with the government of Bangladesh. So that's an area where I can see a great deal of positive gains in terms of learning from each other around civil, maritime security and safety in the region. The second one, actually, and just before I say what the second one was, is that we were asked at the beginning of this whether we had any new ideas. And so I'm raising this one because I don't expect any of the other panelists to raise this point. The second MOU was actually an MOU on culture and the arts, working with the government of Bangladesh and the government of Australia to promote culture and the arts. And the reason I'm focusing on that, culture and the arts, in a talk on maritime safety and on maritime challenges, is because when we talk about culture and the arts, it's really easy to focus on the importance of those people-to-people links, building those relationships outside of areas of sort of that colder form of diplomacy and conflict management. So I think one of the other areas of cooperation I think is really important and something that we don't lose sight of is that everyday cooperation around sharing our cultural experiences, bringing the region closer together, because at the end of the day, all these decisions are made by people and individuals. And the more we get to know each other, the stronger and more resilient the region will be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Going back to Mr. Ahmad, how critical are the partnership with ASEAN nations for the Bangladesh Indo-Pacific policy? And what more can be done to deepen these ties in terms of defense and economic security?
Thank you, Leonardo. I'd like to address this issue regarding ASEAN under two headings. One being how to deepen the ties with ASEAN, and the other being how critical is the partnerships. I'd start with how critical could be the partnerships. In our part of the world, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, we have a term called VUCA, hungry. In the international relations parlance, we call it volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So the world is VUCA. Individual nations are VUCA for more space. Individual political leaders are VUCA for their power and positions. And individual citizens, majority of this part of the world, are hungry for food. They're VUCA for food. But we need to understand the total gamut of this context of having partnership with ASEAN. Bangladesh is yet to become a member of the ASEAN. However, back in 2005, in the 12th ASEAN Regional Forum, they decided to offer Bangladesh the admission as one of the member, and Bangladesh became a member of the ARF Forum back in 2006 as the 26th member. The ASEAN members and Bangladesh, we, as my understanding goes, also share similar culture, aspirations, threats, and also the urge not to remain VUCA, to have prosperity. So, Bangladesh as a maritime nation and as a proud nation of the Indo-Pacific region would love, to my understanding, to be a full-fledged member of the ASEAN for reasons that is obvious. First, it comes to my mind the forcibly displaced Myanmar nationals. Otherwise, we call them Rohingyas. Myanmar is a ASEAN's member state, and ASEAN countries, when Bangladesh is in the team, can try to address this challenge. It has been over a decade that these people are here. When we talk about human rights, what more violation of human rights can be to displace people from their country, from their own homes? So as such, that could be one of the important factor that could actually inspire Bangladesh to be one of the member of ASEAN. And the ASEAN nations, because we have other economic, diplomatic connections, so they can also take Bangladesh because of the proximity of Bangladesh to China and also another of our neighboring country, India. And also, very important, geostrategic access to the Bay of Bengal to the Indian Ocean. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Going back to Mr. Brewster, some analysts have been calling Bangladesh an emerging middle power. What role do you think that Bangladesh can play in the regional security in the Bay of Bengal and the broader Indian Ocean?
Yeah, thanks, Leonardo. So this idea of Bangladesh as an emerging middle power is something that I and a number of other analysts have been talking about in recent years. I've been a very regular visitor to Bangladesh for around 15 years or so now, and I regard myself as a good friend of Bangladesh. But it's long puzzled me that Bangladesh has not been as an active player in the region as it might have been. And there's probably a number of good reasons for that, involving focusing on internal economic and social development. But I think that's going to change. Bangladesh is one of the largest countries in the world, and as its economy has grown, so has its interests in the region, and so has its ability to project its own interests. And I think in coming years we're going to see Bangladesh playing a more active role in the region in a number of ways. So yesterday we heard one of the speakers talking about Myanmar and that China really wasn't doing enough to address the problems there, and nor was India. And what that speaker didn't ask was, well, what was Bangladesh doing? Bangladesh has vital interests in Myanmar, as we all know. And yet, really in recent years, it has not really sought to shape the strategic environment in Myanmar in accordance with Bangladesh's interests. Frankly, in my view, a lot could be done to seek to avert the potential for, many more hundreds of thousands of refugees to be displaced into Bangladesh. So that's one side of it. But I think in more broad terms, I think Bangladesh has the capability to play a extremely valuable role in the Bay of Bengal and the broader Indian Ocean region. Bangladesh has unique perspectives and experiences that it can bring to the table to help stabilise our increasingly unstable region. And in my view, for example, Bangladesh can play a key role in working in partnership with other middle powers to mitigate the effects of major power competition, to try and lower the temperature between the major powers, and to work with other middle powers to help stabilise the small countries, because they're the ones who are suffering in terms of being squeezed between the major powers, which leads to economic and political instability. So overall, I think that Bangladesh, in partnership with other middle powers, Australia and a number of other middle powers, can do a lot to stabilise our region in a way that benefits not only Bangladesh's interests but also broader regional interests. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Going back to Professor Bharadwaj, what role does the Quads plays in Indo-Pacific strategy? And given to the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has hailed the needs of reducing its military presence around the world, how do you feel this posture could affect the Quads?
Thank you. It's a very interesting question for me also. Uh, what is Quad? What is Indo-Pacific strategy? What they are looking? Of course, all the countries in Quad or they are looking in free and open Indo-Pacific region. They have the motive of promotion and establishment of rule-based law or rule of law, freedom of navigation, free trade, and finally the pursuit of economic prosperity. These are the common goal. When you will see Trump won was I can say the Quad is or Indo-Pacific strategy is the baby of Trump won. That has been growing and had developed. This strategy was developed along with Japan and all that. So who will not, who doesn't want peace and prosperity, open and free Indo-Pacific region? Every country wants. So Trump will also continue this policy of Quad and Indo-Pacific strategy. Though the country specific approaches are there, the United States, they want their primacy in this Indo-Pacific region. So they are actively engaged. They are building this. The other countries, what I would say, like Japan. Japan is very, the Kishida, he has also come out with this an idea of Indo-Pacific strategy. The Japan is also actively engaged in this Indo-Pacific regions for the prosperity and for the development. I can give one of the example, like Japan has come out particularly in the context of Bay of Bengal, that Bay of Bengal industrial growth belt, the Big B concepts. In this Big B concept, Japan is talking about three major projects, three things. One is that energy development, the massive supply base of primary energy, particularly developing Matabari, one of the seaports. Japan is looking for industry and trade and through this Matabari port, and of course the transport connectivity in this Bay of Bengal region, so that the primacy of Japan or the India and all the South Asian countries can be maintained in this Bay of Bengal region. The Australia, of course, also looking to have better cooperation in non-traditional security areas, particularly in the context of energy in Indo-Pacific region. That there are a number of examples where they are having the transnational Indo-Pacific corridor, energy corridor from Australia to Indonesia to Singapore, and that can be extended to up to India. So that could be a very good initiatives to develop, bring the prosperity in Indo-Pacific region. The last is India. India is looking, India has little delusion or difference in understanding this Indo-Pacific strategy. One is that India doesn't want to limit this Indo-Pacific strategy from Hollywood to Bollywood. India is looking beyond Bollywood and wants to include the countries of the Middle East or West Asia, or that particularly that terrorism and security issues are primarily dominating in this discourse. The second, India is also looking to make this Indo-Pacific strategy more inclusive, more collaborative, more cooperative. And in this, India is developing its own strategy and its own approach to ensure the security in Indo-Pacific region. And one of the prime example is that we have come out with the Sagar, that security and growth for all. And there are 40 littoral countries, island countries are involved in this Sagar projects. We are looking forward to have safety and security of shipping, seaborne trade, fishing, energy supply, citizens security, assets and resource security, exclusive economic zone security, blue to protect the blue economy in this. And we have been working very actively in this region, particularly in COVID-19. That number of examples can be given to ensure prosperity and stability and in this Indo-Pacific region. And also in the security perspective, one very significant example to have a cooperation with Mauritius, the offshore petrol vessel that OPV has been given to Mauritius, the Barracuda, and the prime objective of this Barracuda is policing the vast exclusive economic zone of this region, particularly in the context of piracy, smuggling, illegal fishing, drug trafficking, and all providing logistic and other supports, and particularly for the search and rescue of different operations in Indo-Pacific region. So we are all looking to have a constructive, positive, inclusive, collaborative Indo-Pacific region, that all these countries, and I'm sure Trump administration will continue with the 4 core countries, and the other countries of their interest will also join this emerging Indo-Pacific strategy with the same motive and same goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And closing this section of the panel, Mr. Dominic, what strategies is Madagascar employing to combat piracy, illegal fishing, and trafficking in Mozambique Channel and the surrounding waters? And which foreign actors could play a constructive role in these efforts?
Regarding the key challenges that I talked about earlier, Madagascar is trying to implement the African Union Integrated Maritime Strategy in the Horizon 2050, which is called the 20 AIM 50. There are collaborative approaches to that end. For example, there is what is called the Indian Ocean Commission, regrouping Madagascar, Réunion, Comoros, Mauritius, and Seychelles, the small islands in the Western Indian Ocean. And in partnership of the European Union, in the face of the rise of the piracy of the coast of Somalia back in 2010, we set up the Regional Maritime Information Fusion Center in Madagascar for maritime domain awareness, and Regional Operational Center in Seychelles for law enforcement. Those were financed by European Union back in 2010. To that end, there is also the Djibouti Code of Conduct in 2010, which was amended by the Jeddah Agreement in 2017, which is aiming at developing maritime law enforcement capability to counter piracy and other threats to safety and security of navigation in the area Western Indian Ocean. So the objective is to enhance maritime domain awareness and information sharing among coastal states in the Eastern Africa, so that we can improve law enforcement. Why? Because there is a need for capacity building, burden sharing, and maritime domain awareness to improve maritime security. And as you know, maritime security is related to economic development and political stability. So with M50 and DCOC, we work with Southern Africa Development Community also, through South Africa and Mozambique in patrolling the Mozambique Channel over the illegal fishing in that area, That is for the multilateral collaboration. But on the bilateral section, we have a partnership with France, United States, China, for providing us some boats for for the Coast Guard, and India, Indonesia, and Turkey for capacity building. The main thing is that recently there is more and more collaboration between the three centers in the Indian Ocean: the Regional Maritime Information Fusion Center, Madagascar, the Information Fusion Center for the Indian Ocean region in Gurugram, India, and the Information Fusion Center in Singapore to enhance maritime domain awareness. That's what I have here.
Thank you very much. So I think we have time for a couple of questions. If someone from the public would like to raise a question, yes, we have one, two. I think, can you go to the microphone? Please introduce yourself and address the question to each speaker you would like to speak. And please be concise so you can perhaps make another question.
Hello. Yeah. I am Commodore Sheikh Mahmudul Hassan, retired, working in the Center for Bay of Bengal Studies at Independent University. So we had a lot of talks regarding the maritime security issues, especially the traditional security issues. I'll just go with the non-traditional one. If I see the booklets where it is written the environmental issues, especially the climate change effects and the transboundary pollution effects. I will just highlight these two. How we can, maybe in the Pacific or in the Bay of Bengal region, how we can do the regional cooperation to combat the climate change threats on the Bay of Bengal or in the seas, and also the transboundary pollution control issues. Thank you.
To whom is the question addressed?
Anyone can answer.
Okay. So let's collect the other questions. Please, the lady over there.
Thank you. I'm a journalist. My question is for Said Misbauddin Ahmed. My question is, there was a certain level of discomfort concerning the naval base that was built in Pekwa by China. I think it was designed by China and also built by China. Was this discomfort justified, and was this discomfort equally shared by most of the strategic partners that Bangladesh has, which are dominating the Indo-Pacific?
Thank you very much. And the gentleman over there, when we close this round.
Thank you. My name is Al Rabbi Siemens. I'm a student from Jahangirnagar University. So my question is to Mr. Ahmed that we have seen when we go for research, we have struggled to have access on the data set related to the Indo-Pacific region, or especially in the Bay of Bengal region. So is it possible to make a central database for the students who are associated in the Bay of Bengal countries like Bangladesh or India? So is it possible to make a central database related with Bay of Bengal ecosystem or the physiochemical variables? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ahmed, you have two questions, so you can start, please.
Thank you very much. If you remember, I started, when I started talking, I mentioned about the unreal threat and the real threat. What I meant by unreal threat is normally the real one. That's the one, the existential one about the climate. And Bangladesh, I think, ranks 7 as the most vulnerable countries in the world. So to mitigate or adapt to the climate change, to be more resilient, Bangladesh is resilient and we are proud of, but we need to do more. It's not enough. So as such, these are the areas when we have, as I personally, it's very close to my heart, that when we have the regional maritime strategy of realpolitik for this entire greater region, then we definitely can join our expertise and create a database. We do have researchers, we do have data, but it's like we do not share. We need to care, and thus we need to share with each other. I agree with you that we need it. Thank you.
Someone would like to address the first question? The first question.
Yeah, let me address about the question raised by about climate and environmental issues. I think this is a very serious issue, particularly while we are keeping the developments in Bay of Bengal region, particularly in the sense of migration, that imbalanced occupations of different islands and the peoples, they are forcibly persecuted, moving here and there, is becoming one of the cause of the environmental threats in this region. That second is, of course, the uneven development taking place. My humble suggestion is that I think what is happening, that we are still in the Bay of Bengal region, we are still lacking very intense collaborative research work altogether, all the countries, including Myanmar, Bangladesh, India, to promote a green energy. Number one, to promote to protect the climate or environmental issues in this region. And I think we need more intense collaborative approach, particularly conducting a good research to identifying that how we can collectively resolve these emerging issues in this region. So it's very, very significant, very important questions has been raised that we are still lacking. We are just focusing more the Bay of Bengal in the context of security perspective. I think we have to look this Bay of Bengal region in the perspective of the non-security threats that emerging in this region, and so that this could be more sustainable maritime security approach in this region. We can protect the emerging issues which is harming the below economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll just do a quick response about the question on pollution. So I led this is a year or two ago, led a study on this issue right across the Indo-Pacific, looking at different sub-regions around the Indo-Pacific and how they addressed what regional structures are in place to address pollution, particularly plastic waste, which is one of the worst aspects of maritime pollution. And the conclusion of that is that essentially Bay of Bengal countries had no meaningful structures to address the issue of plastic waste. And there are other parts of the Indo-Pacific that provide very interesting and successful models of being able to address the issue, whether it be in Southeast Asia through ASEAN, also the Pacific Islands. Certainly, maritime pollution is an example of something that really can only be properly addressed in a regional way. It's no use one country addressing the problem while their neighbours are polluting the waters. And so Bangladesh and other Bay of Bengal countries actually have some very useful and interesting models around the Indo-Pacific that you can look at to work with cooperating with your neighbours, particularly in addressing the plastic waste issue in the oceans.
I just want to say I'm happy to answer the question on Papua, so the submarine base. I think it really goes back to the question of sovereignty. So something that the Australian government is very keen to highlight throughout the Indo-Pacific is that it's not about which countries other countries choose to partnership. It's about that question of sovereignty. And the question that's been asked is not actually a question for the panel. It really should be a question for the Bangladeshi people. So what we've seen is that since the Gono Ubutan, lots of projects have been reopened, and people have been looking and asking, was this value for money? Was, in the case of Pakua, you could say, was the purchase of certain defence material fit for purpose for Bangladesh's defence objectives? But they're really questions that are best placed for the Bangladeshi people to answer about this. But I just wanted to reinforce that from the Australian perspective, the question is not about who's involved, but the question is whether sovereignty has been given its due regard in that place. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Unfortunately, we ran out of the time, so whoever wants to make another question, I would invite you to talk to the panelists in the sidelines so we can make the way for the next panel. Thank you very much for the professor's contribution. I think it was amazing. We were able to cover most of the issues, challenges, opportunities of the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you very much.